The 2020s have been a wild ride for video games. Now, the new consoles had these crazy launches with hardware shortages, but quality games kept on coming, and there's been a lot of really great experiences over the last few years. So, as we turn the corner into 2023 and we are here, I figured it would be a good time to look back at the 2020s. So far, pick out some of the best first-person shooters that stood out, that may actually end up being in people's best of the decade YouTube videos when we get to 2029. So you let me know which of these you played the most. Drop a like. Welcome to the page. And we start off with a game that I think some people saw as a disappointment, but hang on. Deathloop. Now, yes, some people said it was a disappointment if it didn't hit your expectations. I think it was one of the best shooters of the decade so far. Plus, the ideas that the team put into the game, they're really good. I mean, I can't wait to see what other games do with similar concepts. Deathloop had you playing through levels over and over again until you could do them perfectly. You created this weird FPS version of Groundhog's Day. It demanded perfection, but it rewarded you for taking risks to speed up your run once you died a few times. Had some technical issues, yes, and the lack of an Xbox port was a bummer, but it's a good game, and you can always rely on an Arcane to come up and give you this really good, unique FPS gameplay loop. First Dishonored, and now this. I honestly can't wait to see what they do next. At number 9, Valorant. Now, when Riot Games, the developers of League of Legends, announced they were going to try their hand at a competitive first-person shooter, a lot of people were very dismissive, myself included. But what they ended up launching was one of the most addicting tactical shooters since Rainbow Six Siege, and it perfectly adapted the world of League to the new genre of games. Now, the gunplay, it feels similar to Counter-Strike. There's a number of special abilities, gadgets, it makes it feel familiar to Overwatch and Siege as well. Valorant really was the best multiplayer FPS genre all rolled into one game, and while it does have issues, still does, unique gameplay loop managed to make it one of the biggest PC games in the world on day one, and it has not released that title. There's lots of rumors suggesting we'll get a console port of Valorant within the next year or so, which would be very interesting because I have no idea how they're going to adapt the recoil patterns of the game to a controller, and I'm not really sure they want to go cross-playing again like this, but I'm eager to see what happens. I think Valorant is one of the best FPS games of the decade so far. At number 8, Resident Evil Village. I mean, does it count as a first-person shooter? I mean, it's played in first person. You shoot a lot of things, so we're going to count it. RE7 brought the franchise back to basics, really stripped things down, so some of the fans were a little bit turned off at how much action RE Village brought back into the equation, but when you look at it as a love letter to RE4, you get it. The developer said many times, the Village was supposed to be an evolution of RE4, and I think Village did it perfect. Not only is it very tense, it's very scary, but the shooting actually feels good. You really feel the impact of each bullet you use once you can't find anymore. Village may not have been people's favorite game in the series, but it has a fan club, a big one. And I really think it's one of the best first-person shooters of the decade so far. You may say that because of the options are limited, but I genuinely think the game is worth your time if you have fond memories of Resident Evil 4. At number 7. Ready or Not. This is a game I've been following for a while, and when it finally launched, it was awesome to see just how much it evolved. Ready or Not is a tactical shooter heavily inspired by the old SWAT series, but with an even heavier focus on realism. You conduct various SWAT team operations in California City, and when it finally hit Steam in 2021, it made waves for how insanely tense and immersive the gameplay was. This is one of the best looking and sounding games I've ever seen. And the gameplay is super addicting, especially when playing with friends. The game is excellent, and with more and more content coming through the updates, it's only going to get better with time. At number 6, Postal Brain Damage. Now, I recently said Postal 4 was one of the worst games of last year, but strangely, the spin-off, Brain Damaged, may be one of the best PC exclusives I'm aware of. I'm serious here. Brain Damaged is a boomer shooter spin-off. It is off the main series. Simply takes everything you could possibly want from an old school FPS, cranks it up to 20, and lets you go. The final product is, yes, an over-the-top, stylish, extremely fast-paced FPS that demands a ton of effort from the player, but it also rewards them with some of the best combat on the market right now. If the Postal series just goes all in on being a boomer shooter from now on, I think people are going to fall in love with the IP all over again. I mean, the Steam page is currently stamped with that ever-elusive, overwhelmingly positive tag, so it's worth giving a shot. Give it a shot. The game is honestly fantastic, and the fact that it came from freaking Postal, I mean, never ceases to amaze me. At number 5, Black Mesa. Now, I know you've probably been hearing about this game for 5 years or more, but the final 1.0 version finally dropped on PC in March of 2020, and it was worth it. It's a passionate remake of the original Half-Life and the most recent versions of Valve's Source Engine, and with a number of improvements from the 1998 original. Half-Life's level design and storytelling have aged like fine wine, and the updated visuals and slight alterations of Black Mesa, they're flawless, brought it to the modern age, and hopefully introduced a ton of new gamers to the FPS classic. The original Half-Life can be a little hard for newer gamers to get into because the visuals are dated, kind of janky shooting, but Black Mesa fixes all of that and shows just how awesome a remake can be if it's made by true fans of the original. If you never played any version of Half-Life, I recommend Black Mesa as your introduction. It's seriously that good. At number 4, Metal Hellsinger. Who knew that blending Doom Eternal with Guitar Hero would be such a good idea? This is one of the most unique games I've seen, blending two boomer shooters and rhythm games to make this elaborate, involved, and amazing FPS experience. You run around, you do combat with dozens of enemies, but you get bonus points and you deal extra damage if you move and attack to the beat of the music, and the game's soundtrack is really good. Even if you don't like heavy metal music, give it a try. It's one of the coolest concepts and ideas for a video game I've ever heard from, and the near universal acclaim that it received is going to keep it fresh in people's minds as we chug along into the 2020s. Get ready for more creative new rhythm games after this one. At number 3, Escape from Tarkov. Now, I never thought a game like Tarkov would catch on to the degree it did, but this indie game managed to single-handedly popularize the extraction game type that has been getting so much attention in recent months. Escape from Tarkov is an extremely hardcore tactical shooter. You grab some gear, you drop at a hotspot, try to gather as much loot as you can, get out in one piece. Along the way, you'll encounter hostile NPCs, other players trying to make off with all the good stuff, at which point you can engage them, you could try to steal what they're carrying, or you could hide. If you die in Tarkov, you lose everything in your inventory, creating this super addicting push and pull gameplay loop that is always going to keep you trying to find better stuff, and don't get too ballsy unless you're a madman. Escape from Tarkov is an excellent game in its own right, and the impact it's had on the industry already, it's going to be felt for the rest of the decade. At number 2, Ultra Kill. I did say it like that. The 2020s have been a time of boomer shooters, and perhaps the best one is Ultra Kill. Indie FPS, basically Devil May Cry mixed with Quake, mixed with Doom Eternal, and that is awesome. You play as a robot blasting through the underworld and killing thousands of enemies in this super stylish and gruesome way, and it creates this super fast-paced and addicting FPS that grades you on your performance after every major combat encounter like Devil May Cry, but also uses enemy blood as health, so that way you're always pushing forward and playing aggressive. It's a fantastic shooter. The updates have been making it continuously better. It launched a couple years ago, but it's been getting a ton of attention in the last few months, so hopefully that trend continues and more people give this masterpiece a try. And at number 1 today, the elusive, the illustrious, best FPS game of the 2020s so far has to be Doom Eternal. Shouldn't be a shock. Many have called this one of the greatest first-person shooters ever made, and since it launched at the beginning of 2020, it was an incredible way to kick off the decade. Now granted, there's a chance it won't be surpassed, but I guess we'll wait and see. Now Doom 2016 was a stripped-down and modernized version of classic Doom gameplay. Doom Eternal was the true evolution. Quickly took over the entire gaming world. Fast-paced, weapon-swapping gameplay. Never felt so good with the addition of tons of new movement options. It played faster than ever, which I didn't think was possible. The game is amazing, and if it's any indication of how awesome AAA shooters are going to be in the future, I'm excited to see what's in store for the rest of the decade. There you go. Let me know one FPS game that has launched in 2020 or later that was deserving of being on this list, and I'll see you guys soon.